Hi everyone, I'm so glad you're here. Today, we're going to share a really important story. It's about how, even when things seem really dark, you can always find a little bit of light.
Okay, so before we dive in, I want you to think about something for me. What makes you feel super safe and happy? You know that warm, cozy feeling? Is it when you get a big hug from your family? Or maybe when you're all snuggled up in your bed playing with your favorite toy? Whatever it is, I want you to hold on to that feeling because it's going to be a really important part of our story today.
Okay, you ready? Let's get started. Our story begins in a time we're going to call life before the changes.
So, a long time ago, way over in a part of the world called Europe, there were lots and lots of Jewish families. They lived in lively towns and big, friendly cities, and you know what? They were such an important and wonderful part of life there. And the kids back then? They were just like you are today. Seriously, they loved running around and playing with their best friends, having big birthday parties with delicious cake, and going to school to learn all sorts of cool stuff. They had favorite books they'd read over and over, and, of course, those super special toys they just had to have with them at bedtime.
So, I want to introduce you to one of these kids. His name was Daniel. And his life? It was full of fun. He had this awesome toy train that he loved to watch go chugging around its track. And man, he was great at kicking a soccer ball around. He had a really happy, loving family, just like all the other families who lived on his street.
But imagine this for a second. What if one morning you woke up and the world just outside your window started to change? And not in a good way, but in a way that felt kind of confusing, maybe even a little strange.
Well, that's exactly what started to happen for Daniel and his family. And that brings us to the next part of our story. We're going to call this part, When the Rules Changed. Okay, so to really get what was happening, we need to learn a new word. The word is scapegoating. It sounds a little tricky, but it's actually a simple idea. It's when people in charge, like leaders of a country, have some really big problems, but instead of trying to fix them, they just pick one group of people and blame them for everything. It's really unfair. It's kind of like bullying, but on a huge whole country scale.
So in a country named Germany, some new leaders called the Nazis came to power, and they did exactly that. They used scapegoating. They started making all these really hurtful, totally unfair rules that were only for Jewish people.
And just like that, everyday life got turned completely upside down. Think about it. Before, Daniel could go play in any park he wanted. His family had their own shop. All the kids went to the same school together. But then, after the new rules, sad signs started popping up, saying things like "No Jews allowed." Jewish families were forced to close their shops. And maybe saddest of all, kids like Daniel were told they weren't allowed to go to their old school with their friends anymore.
And then another hurtful rule came along. Jewish people were told they had to wear a yellow star on their clothes. Now, this wasn't a cool badge or a sticker. It was something meant to point them out, to make them feel different and all alone. It was just one more unfair way to try and separate people from their neighbors.
So what happens when the world around you becomes so unfair? What do you do? Well, let's find out in our next part, which is called Staying Safe During Hardship.
Things got even tougher. Families like Daniel's had to pack up and leave their homes, taking only what they could carry in their arms. They were moved into these very crowded parts of the city, called ghettos. Life there was really hard. There wasn't enough room to play, or even enough food sometimes. But, and this is so important, even in that really hard place, parents and neighbors and friends worked so hard to keep the kids safe. And the ways they showed their love were just incredible. You see, when the kids couldn't go to their regular schools, brave teachers and parents started up secret schools. Families would share every last little bite of food they had. They found ways to play quiet games in secret, just so the kids could still have some fun. And at night, they'd tell stories about happier times, to keep hope alive in everyone's hearts.
Now, of course, the kids were scared. It was a really scary time. But they also found out something pretty amazing about themselves. They learned that you can be scared and you can be brave at the exact same time.
And you know what? Some of these kids became real heroes. Because they were small. They could sometimes sneak out of those crowded places to find food. And then they'd bring it back to share with their families. That kind of bravery, it was like a little tiny light shining in the darkness.
And those kids, they weren't the only lights. And that leads us to a really hopeful part of this whole story. It's called the courage of helpers.
Because you see, even when things seemed as dark as they could possibly be, there were still people who chose to be a light. These people, they were the helpers.
And these helpers, They were just regular people who did amazing, extraordinary things. They were neighbors who bravely hid families in their attics or on their farms. There was this one incredible woman, her name was Irina Sendler, and she helped rescue 2,500 children. An entire country, Denmark, worked together to help almost all of their Jewish neighbors get to a safe place. And there were even kind people who organized special trains called the Kindertransport just to take children to safe countries where they would be looked after.
So you see, a helper wasn't someone in a superhero costume. A helper was a regular person, just like you, just like me, who made a brave choice. They chose to be kind, even when it was really, really hard, and probably pretty scary.
And that right there brings us to maybe the most important part of our whole story today. It's called Remembering with Hope.
There's a really big reason why we tell this story, even though it has sad parts. It's so that we remember. Because when we remember what happened, we're making a promise to ourselves and to each other to make sure nothing like it ever happens again. Remembering helps us learn to always choose kindness and be fair to every single person.
And maybe the biggest lesson of all is this one simple thing. It just takes one person to be a helper. Just one person to make a huge difference. One person to stand up for someone who's being treated unfairly. That's it. Just one.
So now, as we finish up our story, I've got one last question just for you. How are you going to be a light for someone? How are you going to be a helper today?